Hello and welcome to the EV Driver Show. Welcome back to the EV Driver Show. It's been a long time since we've had one of this on this channel. I'm joined today by Martin. Martin, it's a long time since we've actually been together on this channel. Last time we actually spoke on video, we both had iPaces.
We did. It has been that long. So I was just thinking this before we started. It must be nearly a year now, I would have thought.
Possibly even longer actually, because I've had my EV6 for just over a year now. So it must be longer. So and that was Osprey, wasn't it? It was the first Chem Power.
That was in obviously their Chem Power site on Spring Road in Wolverhampton.
Yeah, which is excellent.
Which
first of many.
It was the first of many, and obviously, if you look now, they're dropping Chem Power equipment all over the country, and obviously, understandably, because as we found on the day, the way that Chem Power system is set up, it's just so ideal. And why other operators are not using Chem Power systems like Osprey, it to me is crazy, if I'm being honest. We're seeing other networks still deploying really clunky equipment, massively sized overkill, really, for what it is. So yeah, I'm very surprised that others haven't yet taken Chem Power. But that site, that setup in Wolverhampton was fabulous. The information we got back to us as the consumer, both on the obviously the app as we tried on the day, and obviously on the screens, was a massive step forward to what we needed in the
absolutely brilliant. And I've noticed Sainsbury's are now installing Chem Power chargers, which is
good. Really? Okay, I hadn't seen that. So yes, you've got a little bit more knowledge than myself at the moment.
Yeah, so this is Sainsbury's own brand chargers, basically, which they're putting in a lot of their places. So, which is really good to see. I mean, it's not everywhere around the country yet, but hopefully.
Well, certainly in my part of the world, which obviously which is Shropshire, which is obviously where I'm based, the deployment of any network is actually pretty poor, in truth. Yeah. I think a county town of Shrewsbury's got 5 chargers total, 2 of which are sitting behind Bannatyne's obviously the gym setup. So really there's 3, because you get funny looks when you go to the gym and people are trying to use the charger and you're not going to use their facilities. We've all been there when you roll up and you suddenly find, am I supposed to use these ones? But no, Shropshire.
Yeah, I guess a lot of new EV drivers don't actually have that experience, because they'll go to the networks and that they won't have had this finding the charger in the back of nowhere behind them.
We've all been there. One of my very first trips was pottering away from this part of the world right down into Surrey, and there was a bit more planning back in those days, and Instavolt was the flavour of the month, really, at that time. Everybody was using Instavolt for their reliability, and I turned up at this charger in the middle of nowhere, really, and it was just a couple of chargers stuck behind the back of an MOT test centre in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, I was sat there like 8 o'clock at night going, what am I doing here? There was no lights, there was no facilities. I was like, this isn't great. But to see where we are now, and that was 4 years ago, it's remarkable the change that has happened in that time. Yeah. We've gone from single chargers, double chargers, to a lot more installations now, which are 4, 6, 8, much bigger setups. They're not all perfect, but most of the chargers
and we're starting to see planning applications going in for double-figure chargers now,
yeah,
like exactly. 20s or 30s even, obviously, and also starting to see some facility for HGV charging, which is going to come.
I actually saw one the other day from EV Point up in Lancashire. There was a HGV setup which I think supports 360 kilowatts.
Yeah.
Which they had a couple of bays there. I think that's the first one I've seen which has been properly advertised as a HGV site, and on the motorway network, which is great. So yeah, we are seeing some changes from some operators that when we were first driving didn't even exist.
Yeah, indeed.
You know,
Yeah, and a lot of those operators which are sort of go-tos. I mean, Instabox is obviously still pretty good
it's
and
still a
reliable.
go-to.
Although obviously they have got somewhat costly recently,
Well,
compared
you can
to
say that.
other providers. But they're there, and they're investing money in new
They
chargers, which
are.
is a good thing.
The only thing I think with Instabot, taking the price to one side, is, and I've said it before, and I've said it on my social channels, is their selection to use BYD chargers.
Yes.
You often see them, especially at McDonald's sites, which is often where you do see them. I have personally found those pretty unreliable, very slow to respond to anything you're doing screen wise, and actually what you're getting from them is pretty slow. So for me, because you don't always know what Instavolt have actually deployed on a lot of these sites now, I started to steer away from them, because those chargers have just not been as good as their, should we say, other hardware vendors they've used in the past. And
Yeah. I mean,
where
I
other
think
networks are using other networks are using what more reliable chargers. It's, to me, it seems a little bit of a step backwards for them. And I understand there'll be commercial reasons and stuff, but
definitely commercial reasons on this. I mean, it is, a lot of it's down to cost. I mean, the interesting thing about the BYD ones is that they actually work fairly well as long as you follow to the letter what the order you're supposed to do things on them.
exactly, yeah. But I found them, certainly with my iPace, to be very, very slow.
Yes, they don't.
Every step, the steps was like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
30 seconds, and you were like, I'm slightly worried now that we're going to time out, because obviously you get that sort of, is the handshaking going to fall apart? And so yeah, you do feel a little unnervy with them. That's the only thing for me, compared to other ones where they almost plug in and they just go within 10 seconds.
Yeah. And I've certainly found with the BYDs, even with my EV6, which is usually pretty fast at handshaking, that it takes 20 seconds or so to do the handshakes on them, which is frustrating and understandable. And I have to say, I'm now starting to steer clear of Instavolt because of the cost. I mean, I love the fact they're installing stuff. I mean, even locally, we've got a Starbucks not far away, which has had 2 Instavolts for ages. And I noticed going past them yesterday, they were installing another 5 Instavolts there. Which for a little tucked away in Starbucks in the middle of Peterborough, which is not really on the beaten track very much. It's quite amazing. But they've obviously got the footfall for doing it, because they wouldn't do it otherwise. So they must. I mean, and I know that charger is always busy, so it's.
And they've clearly got the data showing on those chargers of the occupancy rate on them and all that sort of stuff, and clearly there's a justification for those to be improved upon, or increased upon, shall we say. The one, obviously it's been a kind of a while since we've spoken. The one I'm still surprised about is GridServe, because we were talked up quite a big project from them in terms of their forecourts. And I think at the time of recording now, we probably have got 4 in operation, I think. And there was big talk about them being everywhere. Now, I don't know whether obviously their commercials changed in terms of their priorities, obviously with acquisition of other networks, shall we say, and we won't mention the other networks because names were popular in the past, shall we say. But I don't know whether they decided to change their direction a little bit in that regard. So the original fanfare, I was expecting to see these forecourts almost in every major town or city. That was the kind of concept we were pushed back. And certainly in my part of the world, there's certainly no planning application for anything. There's certainly nothing planned for, say, Birmingham, which would be my nearest city. I know you've got the pleasure of them down in your part of the world.
I mean, the ones at Norwich I've used quite a bit on trips to see family out in Norfolk, and that's been really good. I mean, I'm looking forward to the one at Mark and Moore appearing, because that's a useful one going up north. Now that'll be really handy to have that. And I think that's the next big one they've got in their plans. I mean, it does seem to.
Is being almost polished off, I think, is another one I've seen. Gatwick, I think.
Yeah, Gatwick they've got as well. Yeah, so I think that the tricky thing is a lot of it has been delays with planning permission. getting the way leaves for actually getting power into these places is a nightmare, and that's something the government definitely needs to do something about.
Yeah.
And I know actually the new regs which came in recently, there is some help in that respect to try and improve that the issues around there. But yeah, it definitely has slowed down a lot. And this is interesting. We've got some new providers come onto the market. I wasn't expecting to see. I mean, I don't know if this has happened around your way, but virtually everywhere I go now, which has got a car park, has got destination charges in it from a company called Montu. And that they seem around here, they've seemed to have started populating our local park, for example,
Yeah.
has now got, must be 20 7 kilowatt chargers.
No,
It's
we're certainly not seeing anything really of that here over in Shropshire. We've got arrangements here with Connected Curb, which seems to be something Shropshire Council have done and have announced pretty much right across the county that they've got some sort of involvement of chargers going in. Generally 7 kilowatt type of chargers, those type of things. But that is about the only sort of destination charges, if you want to call them, that is really here. And you can't just turn up and use Connected Curb. You've got to be a member, and you've got to have all that sort of, some sort of linked association with membership behind it. So you can't just to rack up and use it. So we're certainly, as a county, are being quite poorly served by all the networks, really, if I'm being truthful. And I'm not just talking high speed stuff. I'm also obviously talking about just generally destination stuff, 7 kilowatt, 22 kilowatt, those type of things. None of them are really being deployed over here at the moment at all. And you mentioned planning applications earlier. Very little that I can see going through on Shropshire Council. So as a council who's supposed, is preaches about green aspirations, they've not been that forthcoming with trying to push that forward at the moment. And yet, I would say now that certainly where I live, I would say 1 in 30 cars now in the town are some sort of electric.
There's certainly that. Yeah, and it's probably a higher penetration here. I was just going to correct myself. Actually, it's Monter, not Montu. I get those two mixed up because there is actually a Montu charging app as well as a Monter. A Monter is actually in the network, which is good. I mean, I really like their app because it's got some very clever little features on it. So every single one of their chargers has got a QR code on. If you scan that, it'll immediately load up. But they've also got RFID, NFC tags as well. So if you've got that facility on your phone, you can just tap it and stuff.
Going back to Kempower, that was kind of what we were seeing in Kempower era. You could do that, and we were saying at the time that is a better way forward. And it's nice to see that other networks have gone, this is a much better way to interact with, should we say, a 2023 EV driver that's coming fresh. It's almost a slightly different audience, I'm certainly finding now, than what it was 4, 5, 6 years ago when I know we're not certainly early adopters, but it's a completely different era, so to speak now, different type of clients I'm certainly seeing buying EVs.
It's certainly interesting. I mean, one of the things I kind of noticed on with the Monto app, and obviously it's 7 kilowatt chargers. They're small poles. They haven't got the ability to take contactless or anything like that. And I think even with the new regulations, they don't have to take contactless. But the actual flow for just taking the payment, as long as you've got a phone, is actually really straightforward. And very, very easy to actually set up. And if you set up the app, it's even better. But talking about the Kempower thing, that obviously that had a really good app, and the information it gave us was really good. I love with the Monto one. I love one of the things I really love about it is as soon as you scan it and you start charging, it says your charging will finish in 4 hours and 2 minutes, or whatever time it is. And it's obviously done all that synchronization with the car, and it's really accurate for my V6. I mean, I don't know if it would be the same for other cars, but it really it gives you that really instant idea what your expectation is. And if you're destination charging, that's really important because you then know what time you got to get back and to unplug.
Now, obviously, you mentioned earlier, so obviously to the viewers, that we've obviously both used to have a Jaguar iPace. And obviously we've both moved away from Jaguar. You obviously got a Kia EV6. and I opted for Lotus with the Electra, which I've had at this point in time about 10 days now. And it's really fascinating to see the progress of change and development from manufacturers in that time, from when the iPace was, let's be honest, was winning all the awards for design and whatever. Absolutely, it was the pin-up for such a long time about what is possible from, should we say, a legacy manufacturer as it was being floated at the time. And it's interesting to see how other manufacturers have let's be honest, have caught up and overtaken Jaguar. There's no question about that. I mean, we've had that conversation ourselves. I mean, we both said we were both quite disappointed with what happened at Jaguar in terms of development of their vehicles, things being pulled at the last minute, almost a complete lack of direction from what they're doing as a business. And to many respects, we still don't know what they're doing as a business at the moment. There's obviously, we know that they've seen designs, they've reviewed designs, they've selected designs, but there isn't a great deal even coming out from them right now. And as I certainly know from my local dealership, Jaguar dealers, people that are coming to the end of their 3 or 4 year agreements with Jaguar have literally got nothing from Jaguar or JLR as a brand to buy from effectively. And they are walking away from the brand, and they're walking away from the brand not by for a loss of love for the vehicle, both of which we would agree was an excellent vehicle, but I personally found it almost trouble free. But we're both walking away from the brand, amongst other people we know, because we had nothing to replace it with. And we probably both would have stuck with Jaguar if we had some other models to opt from.
And I've been through my decisions on this channel before, but the couple of key reasons for me moving on to iPace is, one, I couldn't get an iPace with the features I wanted in an iPace, so I couldn't. They pulled a lot of the. I mean, obviously this was COVID time, and there was a lot of problems around supply, but equally they hadn't done any development on the iPace.
There was nothing. I mean, the midlife design of it was to stick a new grille on the front, and I think offer one additional paint option. That was classified as a midlife development.
And it's such a shame because it was so ahead of the competition, and they could have done so much more with it.
They never marketed the vehicle. I remember having this conversation. They phoned me up sort of 6 months or so after the purchase to ask my thoughts, and I was like, it's a fantastic vehicle, but you don't advertise it anywhere. And the answer I got from some person collecting this information was, well, we just believe that social media is going to push it for us. Social media will explode and it'll do all the marketing for us. So at that point, they had absolutely no intention of putting any form of additional support to promote that model and get it moving numbers. The fact that we saw it shift the numbers it did and then sort of drop off does not surprise me whatsoever. They almost kind of lost love with the vehicle sort of 2 years after its launch and just didn't really know what to do. And in my personal view, it's just a shame because it should have done much better. They were out before their equivalent peers, namely the German marques at the time. Your BMs, your Mercedes, Audi. None of their vehicles had dropped while the iPace came out, and they just didn't take full advantage of it at all. The car was made no more efficient, and from a vehicle with that battery size, the fact that I was getting about 230 out of it, if I was being realistic, after running it for four years, wasn't really good enough compared to other vehicles at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think 230 was what. So the other thing about the iPace, and this is something I've really noticed since I've come with the EV6, is the iPace was very inaccurate in its estimates. So it would tell you it
Yeah,
was going to give you 230, and actually your journey would be about 180 miles and you'd run out.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas EV6 gives you, if it says it's going to give you 230, it gives you 230.
And I'm already noticing that on the Lotus already. So it is estimating around 320 miles, and I'm
Yeah,
pretty much getting 320 miles on
yeah,
it. It's
I am free.
more efficient than the iPace.
I am
This is a
future.
vehicle which is heavier.
I am limitless.
They're light today in terms of their technical approach to what they're
I am
doing.
Electra.
The Lotus is basically everything the Jaguar should have been with 5 years development.
yeah, yeah, indeed. Yeah,
And that's a good way of putting it. I think for Lotus to be a tiny manufacturer by comparison, and for them, I know they've obviously got the support of Geely and stuff in the background, but it's a small team that's put a lot of this together, and they've developed a vehicle which is mightily impressive. I mean, I cannot tell you how many people since I've had the vehicle are taking photos, are taking videos. I've driven into supermarket car parks, and I'm watching people, their mobile phones are going up and they're taking videos of me. It's quite I'm not used to it, let's put it that way. I'm
actually,
trying to
I mean,
imagine what happened with the iPace when we first got it. People
yeah,
were turning
yeah.
heads, you know.
Yeah, exactly that. When we first got the iPace, you used to get people stopping you to talk about it, and
Yeah,
like but,
yes.
and I can exactly imagine that with the Lotus because it's a lovely car. I mean, I've seen it a few times. I saw a lot of the developmental stuff of it over the
Yeah,
years,
yeah.
and
You sent me a few pictures of things in early doors, and I was like, oh, damn you, man, damn you. Stop tempting me. And at this point I'd actually had paid the deposit, but I was still like, oh, have I done the right thing? This is a vehicle I have no knowledge of, basically. And then obviously you popped a few pictures over, and I was like, I think I'll stick at it. I think I'll
yeah.
get there. But
Yeah,
but
you could always tell they were going the right way in what they were talking
yeah,
about, the developmental of it, development of it, and their thought processes, and the thing which got me talking to the Lotus engineering guys who were involved in the process was they really thought of it from a driver's point of view. I mean, obviously that's their ethos anyway. I mean, taking back to Colin Chapman days, the Lotus ethos has always been about the driver, but they really thought about it not just from driving the car and performance and that, but the practical day-to-day actual use of it and
yeah.
things like charging and the convenience and all those things were built into it as well, which that bit
You
kind of surprised me for Lotus.
yeah, you can. I can certainly tell from a driver's point of view. There's a lot of thought gone into the vehicle with all aspects, not just the driving, but the where things are in the vehicle, even down to the infotainment things. The things you want within immediate reach are within immediate reach. They're on the right, you know, the perfect distance from wherever you need to be. The less used things are a bit further away. The whole usability is being well thought out. It's not without its faults. Don't get me wrong. It has a couple of niggles at this stage, which seem to be software related. It is running on a very early version of the vehicles at the moment. Couple of niggles with warnings there, here, there, and everywhere. So, you know, driver assisted stuff. There's more beeps and bongs than anybody would care to want. And a lot of these things, you set them to certain things and they reset themselves back on the next thing. So there's a few of those little niggles. I'm personally dealing with a problem at the moment with DAB. It sounds like I'm listening to FM radios at the moment, and it is a known issue that they are investigating at the moment. So just a couple of little software issues, but the UK vehicles are running basically version 1.00C. The Chinese vehicles are running 1.00H, so they're way ahead, the Chinese vehicles are, than the UK vehicles, which does surprise me a little bit that we are running so far behind, obviously, the Asian market. As I understand it, a lot of it's just down to translation from Chinese to English. It's just taking its time to filter through before they released it. But so its faults on the vehicle at the moment, I would say, is software related. But I go back to the iPace, and we went through all those problems.
Oh, of course, and
You
I,
know,
I had problems when I first got the EV6 as well. I mean, I don't know if you remember my radio issue I had where it was popping every few seconds and it was making really horrible sounds. And it was like it was,
I forgot about that. Yes, you did. Yes.
yeah. And that was a software change that fixed that. And I think that's the modern car. I mean, because we're both in the software industry. We have been in software, so we know what software development's like, and it's a difficult thing to get right.
It's a difficult thing,
and it's actually more difficult than mechanical engineering is to get right. So what happens is the development of the vehicles runs way ahead of the development of the software normally.
Oh yes, I remember seeing the Electra in a Birmingham showroom. I was invited over there. Very early vehicle. This was back in May, and you could see the fit and finish of the vehicle was bang on, but it wasn't the polished article. But the software was just so far behind the actual car itself that they were saying, pretty much don't touch much of the software because it's not going to do absolutely anything you're hoping it will do. But you can certainly see in those sort of 6 months since that moment in time how much has improved on the software. Don't get me wrong, they have removed some stuff from the software as well, which clearly hasn't made final release. A few options that I'm certainly was aware of that I saw in the earlier, obviously, beta vehicle, shall we call it? But it's a good package overall, a good package. I'm certainly very pleased with it, and I'm quite a sort of finicky type of person. I will find the biggest flaw in the smallest problems, and that's just the way I'm being a programmer. That's kind of how my brain is. I've got to find those type of faults, and I'm kind of applying the same mentality to the vehicle. But as I said, I mean, you say you've gone over to Kia, and your experience with that vehicle has been superb. They've done a wonderful job, and rightfully so. They've done some. Kia have done some cracking things in the market over the last few years, and they're getting the orders. They're everywhere, and that's a great thing from Kia's point of view.
I thought it was really interesting actually that there was an experiment done by a German university that they rebadged. I think it was actually my EV6 as an Audi. So they basically blanked out all the Kia stuff for it and actually put Audi plates on it, and then took it out to the German markets to see what people thought about it, and it got rated incredibly highly. And then
we got
it as Kia. And I often feel, looking at it, there's a lot of Audi about it in terms of the styling, because you see some of the Audis coming towards you, and you get that.
I must admit, I mean, certainly in my local area, there's a lot of EV6s that have appeared in the last 6 months, and I must admit, I've only started to really appreciate it for some of its design cues and some of its design language. It's quite clever, and one came up the back of me a couple of days ago, and I must admit, I found myself looking in my mirror at this Kia going, that's quite an aggressive car behind me. It looks the part, I don't know whether you're just trying to chase me for the sake of it, but I must admit, I was looking at this vehicle thinking, that's a nice vehicle behind me. And I'm still saying it now, I've seen a few of them locally, and just no matter which color it's in, it just seems to work. They seem to have got it right.
Yeah, I mean, I know when it first came out, people sort of saying, "Oh, nice front, not so sure about the back," or other people say, "Nice back, I'm not sure about the front." And it does have that sort of bit to it. I mean, the back is, I mean, it's got Porsche cues to the back of it, which is interesting. And I've got used to it. I mean, I didn't actually like the back of it when I first got it, but in the flesh, actually, it's better than the pictures were. But it still wasn't sort of my favourite design.
It's one of those things that people are so used to. The designs over the last sort of 15 years, they're all the same, really. I mean, all the manufacturers pretty much the same. Just change the badge on the front and tweak the rear end. And realistically, if you put a BMW 3 Series against a Mercedes C-Class side by side, the panels almost meet in exactly the same place. They're so identical vehicles, and you can say the same with an Audi. There's not much in it. But certainly with the EVs, the sort of the designs over the last couple of years, they've really decided to push the boat out. And there's some really brave designs out there, which in my view need to happen, because to push design forward, somebody's got to be brave enough to give someone else an idea and see how it runs. I came across just a Twitter thread today. Somebody was talking about Mercedes and their design language, and it was quite interesting to see so many people that had considered some of the EQ products, but had walked away from Mercedes because the design language just felt boring. And I wonder how many sales they have actually lost, and maybe the other manufacturers have been in the same boat because of it, and they've gone to something just a little bit more interesting.
And I think that there's been a definitely from some of the legacy automakers this idea that you have to make an EV look like a conventional older car, and not take advantage of some of the stuff you can do with an EV, which
you can do, because obviously batteries certainly being placed in the middle of the vehicle, lower, means that short